I heard years ago, and I just believe in this, that the best gift you can give your kids is to love each other. So if you put your relationship as a top priority, as not secondary, not down the line six other priorities or someplace else, but put it as a top priority and take those moments, go on date nights. You don't have to spend a lot of money. There are websites out there that will give you suggestions on things to do on a date night that are free. So find those things, if money's an issue, or go out for a great dinner if money's not an issue, or whatever. But spend time just the two of you.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very happy to welcome back Miss Kim Sorrell. She is not only a cancer survivor, but she is also an author and a speaker. And you said you're into life coaching now?
Oh, I love
Coaching. Love
yeah.
coaching. All right. Well, I'm interested to get caught up with you, but I guess catch us up to speed.
Yeah, Kyle, first of all, it's so great to see you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I started love coaching, which has really been great. I wondered how to help people. I've coached my whole life. I coached basketball for 25 years. I coached volleyball for 17 years. And in a lot of ways, coaching is coaching. You get the best out of your athletes, you get the best out of people and help them in the best ways. And so it's really been interesting. People with marriage problems that are back on track and headed to divorce and no longer, and families reunited, people that have had issues with a family member or a friend and mended some stuff from the past, and um, all kinds of stuff, or just wanting to live this life better and really do it right. So it's been fun.
Well, I can imagine with the lockdowns that we had that probably did cause a few divorces. Did you encounter a lot of those folks?
Well, I think people want one way or the other. Kind of like when you have a sick child or you go through some big traumatic thing, either people got close or they went, why the heck are we together all the time? And so some marriages I think got a lot stronger and some maybe went away.
Well, I have to say, the time that I've had with my wife has just been incredible, and she's been able to work from home, and they kind of went hybrid, so she's working most of the week at home and only a couple of days in the office, and I think our marriage has gotten stronger. We actually get to spend a little bit more time really getting to know each other even more. When I was working and then she was working from the office, I mean, we hardly spent any time together. We come home in the evening, cook supper, sit down and watch TV for a while, wash up, and then go to bed. And that was our routine until the weekends. And then usually by the weekend, we're both so tired we didn't feel like doing anything. And I
Okay.
mean, I don't know if you remember from the last time we talked, but I have a disease in my spine where the bone's deteriorating, and so I had to retire. And so most of my days are home, and it would get lonely from time to time when she was gone. And now she's home most of the time. It's great. And she's
I
not
love
listening, by the way.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think there's this common misconception that if you're apart, like I travel for work. I run a nonprofit organization. And so sometimes I'd be a week or two in some country in Africa and come home to my husband, and you think that it's going to be this big honeymoon time, right? Like, oh my gosh, we've been apart. It's so great. Be back together. And whatever, but it actually puts stress on our marriage. And a lot of relationships are like that. When there's a separation, it can put stress on your marriage. And so to be together more, it makes sense that things would be better.
Well, I would think that, a short time being away from each other yeah, you're going to be excited to see each other once you know your part. Like if my wife has to go take care of her mom, we're up here in Austin and her mom's down in Houston. So she'd be gone for a day or two. And then when she finally get home, like, oh, I'm so glad you're home. But then when you get in that routine of being away from each other so much, I think, I don't know, maybe you tend to get used to being apart that much. And that's where the strain comes in.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think some of it is expectation. Some of it is, well, it should be this time that, like for me, I would come home from somewhere, I couldn't wait to see my husband. And I anticipated this great homecoming. Like when you used to be able to go to the gate at the airport. I don't know if you remember those days back in the day before TSA, and you'd see these reunions, right? People would come off the airplane and people would run up and hug them. And it was like this great moment. And sometimes it was a family member, friend, but a lot of times it was a couple, that was maybe somebody lives somewhere and they're coming to visit or welcome home, whatever it was. I wanted those moments. Like I wanted to get off the plane and have my husband standing there waiting for me and him run to me and we fall into each other's arms and have this great romantic love fest. And I didn't get those moments, but I expected them. So I was disappointed that I didn't get those moments, that he just, hey, how are you kind of thing, instead of this big lifetime movie moment. And so I think that screwed me up a lot, was my expectation compared to reality. I think it messes up a lot of relationships, really, expectation.
Is money problems still like the number one thing that causes most relationships to break down?
Well, money problems and kids, but I think the issue is it's not really money problems. That's not really the issue. The issue is knowing each other, loving each other the right way, understanding what love really is, and then loving each other the right way. You should be able to get through pretty much anything. And so money just kind of is a symptom rather than the actual issue.
Well, in my circle, the relationships that have fallen apart, it seems like I hate to say it, but I'm getting older and I'm a grandpa, but our kids they're growing up and they're moving on, and then you're kind of left with a stranger in the household because they spent so much time about the kids, they didn't spend as much time about each other and getting to know each other. I'm sure you run across that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately all too common. And I heard years ago, and I just believe in this, that the best gift you can give your kids is to love each other. So if you put your relationship as a top priority, as not secondary, not down the line 6 other priorities or someplace else, but put it as a top priority and take those moments, go on date nights. You don't have to spend a lot of money. There are websites out there that will give you suggestions on things to do on a date night that are free. So find those things, if money's an issue, or go out for a great dinner if money's not an issue, or whatever, but spend time just the two of you. One of the problems I think too that happens goes back to expectations. So I love romance. I love romance. And so I expected my husband to provide the romance, because you watch the movie The Notebook, she's not providing the romance, he is. Any of the movies, any of the romantic movies, it's always the man with the big grand gestures. And so I expected that from my husband, but he told me pretty early on that he was not romantic and didn't give compliments a lot because he was left-handed. Now, I don't know if the left-handed has anything to do with that, but the reality is he didn't need the romance. I needed it. I needed it. He didn't need it. And so often we get into these gender role things where we think Well, it's the man. He's supposed to do it. But ladies, if you need the romance, create it. It's okay for you to create it. So that's what I started doing is I started creating the romance and I loved it. The first couple of times I kind of begrudged it. Like he should be doing this for me, you know, and he better love it enough, you know, whatever. But then I realized, no, I enjoy this because I want the romance and I loved doing things for him. Like it was so fun to set up a weekend away or surprise him with a picnic on the living room floor when he came home and whatever it happened to be, you know, big things, little things, whatever. It's okay, whoever is the romantic one in the couple, to create it and let the other one enjoy it.
I watched a movie last night and it's called Sign of Life. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the premise of it is, and it sounds crazy, but um, when David Bowie died, this lady is like, I mean, she's totally distraught, and she's having this argument with her, I guess it's her boyfriend, and she's telling him, David Bowie died, and he's, we didn't know him. Why are you so upset? We didn't know who this guy was. And she just don't understand. And it just started escalating from there. What else did she say? Oh, sometimes I just need you to take things seriously and all you want to do is joke. And then I expect you to, make that grand gesture. And he goes, well, like what? And she goes, well, if I tell you, then it's you're going to do it, and then I'm not going to like it, or because you're doing it only because I told you to. And he says, well, can you just give me an example so I know what I'm supposed to do? And she's like, no, I can't even give you an example because it's you're just supposed to know it. You're supposed to read my mind. But during this argument, he falls into a wormhole, and then he's gone for 25 years, and he all of a sudden comes out of the wormhole, and she has waited all her life expecting him to to come back, and so she's pretty much wasted her life waiting on this guy. And then she starts to realize where she had gone wrong, and then they went into the wormhole together. They ended up back to where he had first went in, and then they're listening to each other argue in the living room. And I think that's when things started to click. And I don't know, something like that makes you think, but we can't read each other's minds. We kind of got to let each other know what we expect. I mean, is that too much to ask, or should we just already know this stuff?
Yeah, if only we already knew this stuff, right? We'd be in a different position. I had this experience when I was early married, within my first year of marriage, and I was very mature 18-year-old, and he was barely old enough to buy beer. So maybe we could have been a little older and been a little bit more mature going into the relationship. But I thought, oh, I'm going to surprise him with everything he loves. I'm going to clean our apartment. He's going to come home. It's going to be beautiful. Make his favorite dinner. He loved lasagna. I made lasagna. His favorite dessert was German chocolate cake. I made it from scratch, and everything was ready. There were candles on the table, and I put on something kind of sexy. And so when he came home, he opened the door and walked in and said, hey, like any other day. He didn't say, hey, baby, you look so great, or, oh, gosh, you cleaned the apartment. Nothing. He said nothing. He just acted like it was just another day. We sat down for dinner, and I'm thinking, well, certainly he's going to say how much he appreciates that I made lasagna and how great it is. He didn't say a word. He was talking about his day, just talking about regular things. Didn't say a word, not a word. I was getting angrier and angrier. So by the time dessert came around, I practically threw the cake at him. And he said, well, what's the matter? Why are you mad? And I said, I did all this and you've said nothing about it. And he said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. First of all, I can't read your mind. Secondly, I've done nothing wrong. It's your expectations that have gotten you in trouble. I didn't know you expected those things. And boy, that made me mad. Because I thought, first of all, you're trying to teach me some sort of a lesson. You're not my father, you're my husband. I got up from the table and I went in the bedroom, slammed the door, and I thinking, my expectations. He's got nerve. You know, I did all this. He says nothing and he's blaming me, my expectations. And then I said, my expectations. He was absolutely right. I never communicated that to him. You know, so often we want to dress up, you know, we're looking great, going to somebody's wedding or going to something special, and we are looking fine. And our husband says nothing at all. And we're mad. Or we say, how do I look? And they say, good. And we're mad because they didn't say what we expected them to say. And we don't want to have to ask for the compliment. Well, it's kind of silly when you think about it. It's a silly thing. You know, you're hoping that your husband looks at you and always thinks you're looking fine, not just because you put a better dress on than you usually wear and maybe you wore your hair a little bit different. If you think about it, if he goes all gaga over that, you might feel a little inferior the days that you just get up and put some sweats on and throw your hair in a ponytail. So think about things in a different way. And instead of having these unmet expectations, communicate and realize it's okay to communicate and that we're all different. And you married him for him, not for the things he does. You didn't stop loving him, or you shouldn't stop loving him because you get married, you're all in love, you get married, and then he leaves his dirty underwear on the bedroom floor. That shouldn't make you stop loving him. Well, that's something he did. It's not who he is. You love him for who he is. So separate the things from the who and realize what's really important.
Yeah, I have this bad habit of when I need something to be done, something needs to get done. I like to get it done right away so I don't have to think about it anymore. And then when somebody tells me they're going to do something, I'm expecting them to go do it right then. And then, you know, a day goes by and it's not been done yet. I get really frustrated and I just end up doing it myself. I mean, a lot of times if it's not done in the first 15 minutes of discussing it, I'll just not say a word, go in there. I'm pissed off and I'll do whatever needs to be done. And I guess I should express this is my expectations. And is it really worth getting upset about because it didn't get done right away?
Yeah, yeah, good point. And I think too, when you talk about it and say, "Hey, I need you to do this," or "This needs to be done," to put a timeline on it, right? Because somebody might hear this needs to be done, and they figure, "Well, you know, I got all week. You know, I'll do it when I want to, do it when I can, whatever." But if you say, "Hey, I need this done, and I need it done in the next couple of hours," well, then you're expressing your expectation, and then the frustration never has to happen. The frustration can come if they agree to it and then don't do it after you put a timeline on it. Then you might
Yeah.
go back and go, "Hey, you know, you were supposed to get this done, and now I'm doing it," or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you need to express your expectations fully, not just partially, and realize that nobody reads your mind. Your wife doesn't, nobody does. And
Yeah.
so, you know, tell them what's on your mind. That
Yeah.
works.
And it's not just with my wife. I mean, it's with the kids. And most of the time it's with the kids, you know, I go do this. I mean, they're adults and, you know, you expect them to be, uh, I don't know, you expect them to be more responsible anyway. But yeah, I don't care if they're 25, 30 years old, they're still almost as if they're, you know, 5 years old.
Right, right. And then you expect them to be like you. You expect them to think like you expect them to think
Mm-hmm.
like the guy that's your age. And if you think back at how you were thinking at 25, you might have been more like they are at 25, because hopefully we're growing, maturing, and doing this life thing better.
Yeah. So you have two books. Are you writing anymore?
I am. Yeah, my two books that I currently have, Cry Until You Laugh is my
Mhm.
first one. And Love Is, about my year-long quest to find the true meaning of love, is my second one. But I'm working on a book right now, a book on grief, because just like love is misunderstood, grief can be misunderstood as well. And so I'm working on a book on co-authoring actually with a medium who's
Oh,
fantastic. I
nice.
love her, Stephanie Barton. She's one of a kind. She's amazing. And so I think that will be really interesting. It's been fun working with her. And I'm working on Love Is for Kids.
Oh, nice. When it comes to grief, I mean, the first thing that pops into mind is that we've lost a loved one. But one I don't think that we talk enough about is the grief of when you've had to break off a relationship. I'll use this as an example. I have a friend, it's a very close friend, but he's doing things he shouldn't be doing, and so I'm kind of distancing myself from him, and it feels almost as if he's died.
Mm.
And I'm going through that awkward phase. It feels like grief. I mean, it is grief. Um, do you touch on that, or is it just mainly with people who have passed away?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, uh, people that divorce grieve, people that lose any type of a relationship grieve. So yeah, no, grief comes in different ways at different times in our lives, but yeah, that is grief. But I would also say that if you have a friend, a spouse, a partner, anybody who is doing things that they shouldn't be doing, whether they're physically hurting you or mentally hurting you or selling drugs or an addiction that they don't want to deal with or whatever, whatever's going on. uh, I think sometimes people think they have to stay in a relationship like that because they need your help, or it would be wrong to walk away. And how is that love if you walk away? But I think the opposite is true. I think love would say walk away,
Mm-hmm.
because if you stay in the relationship, it means you're enabling the person to continue the behavior. And you don't want to be an enabler. Then you're
That's
setting
right.
yourself up for codependence. And that's not good. That's not healthy. That's not a healthy relationship. So sometimes the best thing to do is walk away. But yes, there can certainly and usually is grief in that for sure.
Yeah, I've already had the heart to heart talk, and then I get the, oh no, I got it under control. I got it under control. And I know that he doesn't. And as much as it hurts, I have to distance myself from that. I can't be a part of it. It not only affects me, but it affects my family. And I know it's got to be affecting his family, but he doesn't want to see it. And we
Well, and you have
just,
no control over them, right?
no,
I mean,
we
we
don't.
don't control anybody. We bring these babies home from the hospital and we control everything. We control when they eat, we control when they get a bath, we control when they go to bed. But then 6, 7, 8 months later, all of your Tupperware is all over the kitchen floor and your pots and pans are banging everywhere. And you realize you've lost total control and you will never get it back again, ever. So we don't control anybody but ourselves. And it can be so difficult when there's a family member, a friend, somebody, a coworker, where from the outside looking in, you can be thinking to yourself, if they only, why doesn't he change this part? Why doesn't he see this in him? And then want to give advice. Well, advice that's unsolicited usually turns out to be, the advice might be good, but it will hurt the relationship.
Yeah,
Nobody really wants unsolicited advice. If people ask for advice, gingerly, carefully give it to them, but realize you have no control. So
that's right.
even if you give advice, it's still their choice how they're going to live. You just have no control over that. but what you can control is your response to it. And it sounds like you're doing the right thing, walking away. And it could be that with time he'll open his eyes and see what's going on and change and come back to you and go, you made me look, you walking away made me look. Who knows what the future will hold. But yeah, absolutely agree with stuff like that's hard.
And the sad thing is I think it's going to take hitting rock bottom before he decides to change, if that's even going to do it at this point. But here, this last couple of years, I've had to make that same decision to walk away from, and this is with family members. I have an aunt that I love dearly. I mean, she was my favorite person in the world, and she's I guess I shouldn't air dirty laundry on here, but let's just say she has made some decisions and has this perception that's not true, and I just don't have anything to do with her anymore, and I hate that because she was my favorite person, and it's like nonstop grief, it seems like. And I guess the thing is it's starting to really affect me mentally.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I've noticed that even my attitude lately has kind of soured because so much of this stuff is going on, and I know I can't control it, and I'm not trying to control it. I'm trying to do the right thing, but it's hurting, and I hate that my attitude sucks from it.
Yeah, well, that's the choice that you're making, though, right?
Yeah,
Like we get to pick how we respond to things. Like
yeah, that's true.
two guys could be in the same traffic jam, and the first guy in the first car is angry and upset, and his blood pressure's rising, and he's honking his horn, he's yelling out the window, and he's just so upset that he's changing his physiology. Like things are going really bad for him. And the guy in the next car could be going, wow, yeah, I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do about it. Kyle's got this great podcast. Maybe I'll turn that on and listen. And is just chill about it, because you get to pick your response to things. You get to pick your response.
Oh yeah.
And so if your response is letting other people get you down, letting them bring you down, then that's what's going to happen. But you can choose to not. But going back to grief, one thing that I think sometimes people misunderstand is we want to use the words move on. You have to move on. You have to move on. Well, I don't think it's moving on. I think it's moving forward. You're not going to forget that person. You love
No,
your
of
aunt.
course not.
You still love her, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
still love your friend. You're not going to forget the great times or anything like that. But you need to move forward in your life. You needed to make the separation and move forward. And grief isn't something that just goes away. Life can change. I remember when my husband died, I was in a fog for a while, not thinking clearly. I went to some movie with a blue guy. I don't even remember the name of the movie, but it was so weird. And I just thought, what am I doing here? All these people in the theater, like they're happy to be at a movie. And I just lost my husband. Like I was just in this fog and this funk. And I'm not in a fog anymore, but I still grieve my husband. I
Well, of
still miss my
course.
husband.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I've lost my brother, and it's been 22 years now since he passed away. And I still, from time to time, just kind of break down. I think, we were supposed to grow old and sit on the porch and be grumpy old men, and I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But, moving forward, I have made some relationships that are very much like a brotherhood or a sisterhood. And I guess can still enjoy those moments, but it just happens to be somebody else there.
Right, right. And you wish it was your brother.
Of
You know,
course.
there's nothing like that relationship, right? If you nurture it, and some brothers are very close, and it's hard. It's hard, but it's also okay to still grieve it. You know, I think people think that there's a timeline on grief. Like you should be done grieving at some point in time, but you don't ever have to be done. People shouldn't judge your grief, and you shouldn't worry about how you grieve. Just grieve the way you do. And so when there are those moments that you cry, it's going to happen, and it's okay. It's all right. You know, sometimes you need to get it out and think about him, and think about the memories, and it can be easy to go, gosh, what would we be doing now? You know, had he not passed away, where would we be? You know, would we be traveling our families together to Mexico, or, you know, would we be the grumpy old men sitting on the front porch? What would we be doing? And the things that you like to do together, and all of that stuff. And I think too, like people, when they lose somebody, sometimes feel like they're being disrespectful, dishonoring, if they laugh again, if they have fun again in life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the opposite is true. I think that if you really want to honor the person who's left you, then be happier, live fuller, enjoy the
Yeah.
life that you have. That's honoring to the person that you've lost. Like live for the both of you, and enjoy that life.
Yeah.
And you have permission to smile again, and you have permission to cry. You know, we have to do that for each other, give each other grace, and let us grieve the way we grieve.
Yeah. I mean, we would expect our loved ones to go on and be happy and not sit there and cry over us every day. I mean, of course, everybody wants to be remembered, but you know, if I'm gone, I want my kids to be happy and enjoy their children and live their lives to the fullest.
Yeah.
It's unreasonable to think, you should be grieving for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think the people that would say that they hope you grieve and just are sad and wallow in the grief and stay in the grief the whole rest of your life, those probably are people you don't necessarily want in your life.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Exactly.
if you really love somebody, of course, you're going to want them to be happy and enjoy. And I think another thing is, yeah, I don't know how often people ask you about your brother. Like, what was he like? Like, we want to talk about our people, right? Like, you want to tell stories about your brother, and people can be afraid to, gosh, I'm going to, you know, open up an old wound, or if I remind him, then he's going to be sad again, or whatever. Or I tell her, then she's going to be upset. And no, I mean, we want to talk about our people. We want to tell stories, and think about the good times, and think about stuff we used to do, you know, and so it's okay probably if people ask you about your brother.
Oh yeah, I love talking about him because he was awesome. He could do some really goofy things. He could do some stuff that would just blow my mind. Like, how in the world did you learn that? Or he taught himself how to play guitar.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then he would start taking guitars apart and learn to put them back together and other things like that. But yeah, this was the guy that when he was 8 years old would be walking down the hallway in my grandparents' house with cowboy boots on and shorts on and a long sleeve shirt. you know, I'm, do you remember when we used to take your tape recorder and you would try to either tape a song off the radio or something like that?
Right.
Okay, so I loved the Dukes of Hazzard. That was one of my favorite shows, and I loved the theme song. So I would wait until the show would come on, and I'd try to record it. Well, I said it sounds like I'm trying to do this all the time. I was trying to do it this one time, and I'm recording it, and I'm all excited, And then I hear clump, 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 clump on down the hallway.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, that was us, you know. Um, he was really good with money. He bought his first car and did all that stuff on his own at a very young age, and just very responsible. And I just hated that he ended his life. He felt like, the situation he was in, he had to go out that way. But there's so many good things about him. I just wished I had told him when he was here. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think because he ended his life, people probably ask you less about him than they would otherwise. My mom died that way.
Mm.
And for years, nobody told stories. Nobody asked about my mom. And then I finally thought, well, I want to talk about her. There was a lot of great things about my mom. She was obviously in pain, inside, internally, mentally, whatever, in pain, that she would go to that place where she wanted to end her life, right? So that was a moment of her 51 years. There were a lot of other moments that were wonderful in those 51 years. And so I just kind of started talking about her, and then people would ask questions, and it worked. Like it's healing, I think, too. But it's
Yeah.
fun to remember the good times. It feels good. You kind of bring you back to those feelings, like a,
Yeah.
a clump, clump, clump down the hallway, wrecking your song.
That's something that I deal with, and I'm hoping that you help people with that go through the same thing, is that survivor's grief, where I feel like he should be here and I should be the one that's gone. You know, um, I mean, do you deal with that often?
Yeah, I mean that's a real thing. I mean, some people die over survivor's guilt.
Yeah,
Some people take
yeah,
it to the extreme, and I think it goes back to the honor the person who's gone. It's I think when somebody you love, somebody someone you're close to ends their own life, it's a whole different way to die. It's a whole different way to leave people, because
mm,
there are questions, and we question ourselves. Why didn't we see? How could we have stopped it? If I would have just stopped over that day, if I would have picked up the phone and called, if I would have, if I would have, but we can't go back. We can't go back. And so your brother was in this pain, whatever was going on in his life, he felt like this was the way out. It's interesting because after my mom died, I thought of ending your life was the most selfish thing you could do. That's what I thought, because you're leaving these people in such a bad way, right? And in such pain. But then I heard this man he was a football coach at one of the big universities in Florida. And football was his life, D1 football coach in Florida. You're a big deal. And so his life was that. And he had a wife and kids, and he got caught illegally recruiting, and he lost his job.
mm,
And losing his job, it's like he lost his identity, he lost everything, and he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed for his family. He thought he was a disgrace. And so he thought the best thing he could do for his family, the most selfless thing he could do, would be to end his life. So he got his affairs in order, made sure the life insurance was paid up, whatever he had to do, planned it for a while. And then he had a note delivered to a friend of his that was a policeman, and it was going to be delivered at the right time, and just to tell him where to go find his body. And he drove out to some remote place near where he lived, and he took a hose and he put it in his exhaust, and then up through his front window, closed the window as much as he could, and started the engine. And then the fumes made him nauseous. and he didn't want to throw up in the car and make that mess. So he opened the door to throw up outside, and he passed out and fell out of the car. And that's what saved his life. And
Wow.
yeah. And so to hear somebody who was there, he wanted to end his life. I mean, he planned it, he was really doing it. And to hear that it wasn't a selfish thing, but the exact opposite of that, I'd never thought of that before. But I think that's true. Quite often that's true.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I've dealt with is that, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and one of the biggest ones was that I was a severe alcoholic, drug addict, and I I was just an awful father. I mean, there's no way around it. I was terrible as a father, and I often thought it'd just be better off if I wasn't here. You know, I already ruined my kids' lives, so just totally get out of the picture. And I tried my best to get be a better father. I don't drink anymore. I don't do drugs anymore, and try to spend a lot of time with my family and let them know that I love them. And but there's still that part of me that's like, why am I even here? They're better off without me. I mean, how do you deal with somebody with a mentality like that?
Well, I think first of all, you have to realize those things aren't happening today. That was yesterday, not even yesterday. That was however long ago.
Mhm.
And addictions are tough. Addictions are tough. You got the gene, brother. You got the gene. It's been medically proven, scientifically proven that some of us have the gene and some of us don't. My mom was an alcoholic. I don't have the gene, and I'm so grateful that I don't have the gene. I have a son with the gene,
Mm.
and he has been sober now for a couple of years and doing really great. But he was down to he was a day away from living on the streets, and it was tough. And showing him tough love at the time was hard, and that's difficult stuff. But I don't think about that period of his life. I think about the good times, and I think about the good times I'm having now. So your kids probably are the same. They're not thinking about their dad that was living in the addiction, but they're thinking about the good times that you're having together now, and that you overcame it. I mean, you're probably a hero to them. I mean, not everybody overcomes their addictions. Not everybody gets to the other side and manages things. I mean, that's heroic. It's brave. It would have been so much easier for you to keep drinking and doing drugs. That would have been so much easier. Not doing those things. It's hard. That's tough. And you did it because you love your family.
Oh
You
yeah.
did it because that's where you wanted to be. You wanted to be that dad. And now you're that dad.
Well, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life alone, and I know if I'd kept drinking and doing the drugs, that's exactly where I would have ended.
Mhm.
Ended up. I'd have had my buddies that I could drink and do drugs with, but you know, that's not the same as being able to go and pick up my grandkids and love on them and spoil them. And I wouldn't have that now if I'd have kept down that path. And my relationship is definitely a lot better with my kids. Sometimes I can tell they still have a bit of resentment towards me, but they don't, they try not to make it too apparent, but I mean, they're still doing things with me and calling me and saying, "Hey, Dad, I love you," and that means everything in the world to me. I just got to get rid of this guilt. That's on me. It's all in my head. My wife tells me that all the time. You need to get that out of your head. It's just really hard when you've done so much damage. And
Yeah, but which I get. Of course it is. It is hard. Because you see what you were responsible for. But now you look at your kids and I'm sure you're proud of them, right?
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
you're a grandpa. You're a grandpa. So somebody in your family's reproducing, and that's kind of fun. And, I think about my own grandparents growing up. They could do no wrong. I'm a grandma 11 times over. And I think about it like having a puppy, having a dog that goes to the bathroom on their own and feeds themselves, because you go to the door, you get there, and they run to the door. They can't wait to see you and welcome you in. And no matter what you do, it's funny. Or no matter what you do, it's the right thing. You can do no wrong in your grandkids' eyes, and we love that. I love that they now they're getting older, so they think I'm a little kooky probably, but they are great and wonderful. And my grandparents were that to me. And I think that when you're in the middle of raising kids, with or without an addiction, with an addiction, all the tougher, but with or without an addiction, I can tell you that my 5 kids, every one of them has had a time in their life. They're all grown, but every one of them has had a period of time where they were so good at telling me everything I did wrong. They let me know everything, the whole laundry list of things that I should have done differently. And when you're raising kids, you make the decisions that you make thinking it's best for them. You're not trying to hurt them. And so, eventually they got over, well, maybe she didn't screw up too bad, whatever. I mean, they're all good people, whatever, something went right somewhere along the way. And so I think it's easy to criticize parents no matter what. And sometimes you break a trust, right? Like, your kid saw this other dad that didn't drink and thought, well, why is my dad drinking? And so trust quite often has to be earned back. And so if you're feeling like they still have some resentment, maybe they're just putting up a little bit of a wall just in case things go down south again. And the longer they don't, the smaller that wall will be until it's gone completely.
Yeah. And we could touch on so many things, but unfortunately we've run out of time today. So Kim, how do people get a hold of you if they want your services?
Well, my last name is Sorrell, and my website's Kim Sorrell, but Sorrell is ridiculous. I'm literally the only Kim Sorrell spelled my way in the entire world, because there are way too many letters in my last name. There are 2 R's, 2 E's, 2 L's, SORRELLE. So KimSorrell.com is my website. But my most recent book, Love is very easy to find, and I'm pretty Googleable. Under Love Is, you'll find me. And I love it when people reach out, and love to talk to people and help any way I can, wherever I can.
Well, I will definitely put the links in the description. And thank you so much for coming back. And, you're welcome to come back again. I mean, I feel like we have so many other things we could touch on.
I think that's true. I know. I wish you lived close by and take you and your wife out for dinner. We could talk and have a good time. So thank you for having me back.
Oh, definitely. I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to this channel, well, first of all, thanks for stopping by, but I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button. And for all my regulars, I thank y'all because you make it possible for me to do this. Like these videos, share them out. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network